everyone, and welcome to The Backline with Rob and Adam. My name is Rob Norman. I'm author of the cool improv book, Improvising Now, a practical guide to modern improv, baby.
Oh, and my name's Adam Colley, alumnus of the Second City Main Stage.
AC, how are you, my friend?
I wish I could explain what today is for you. But for me, and maybe one or two other people around the world listening, today is the NHL's free agency day. So at noon, everybody who did not have a contract was free to sign with any other team. And it is a blast. So I've been having a lot of fun checking out Twitter, seeing who my boys got. And that's what I'm so into today and will be for the next few days.
And they can get any player they want.
Well, there's also a salary cap. Like, the reason it's not just like fun to get new players, there's also something about watching the problem solving of like, what does this team need? How do we get it? Looking for deals. How do we get this team to retain some salary in this trade? And it's just a lot of fun. And then all the different fan bases get involved. It's a great time. So that's what I'm excited about. I just came back to Toronto from LA, and I'll be here for a little bit. So excited for that. See some people, do some shows. But really, none of that seems to matter because it's free agency day.
Cool. LA Kings.
Yeah.
LA Kings.
Yeah. What's up with you? What's going on?
Oh, nothing. A tiny baby sliced my eye today.
Now, just to clarify for everybody listening, this is your baby.
I'm not going to say which baby.
Okay.
I'm going to say a tiny baby. I was playing with a tiny baby. Whose baby it is, not important.
Fair.
And her tiny little finger went right in my eye, in a place that I don't have access to. And she managed to nick my eye. And so I get about 30 minutes of sight, and then I get maybe about 45 minutes of unbearable, like, crying and pain. So maybe you'll be able to catch it on this episode today, live. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we rarely have tears in this. There's a lot of tears after the podcast, but not a lot of tears while we're recording, which is interesting.
During.
Yeah, during will be
The word's
new.
during, yeah.
During, with a J. But this is fun. I'll be getting a chance to see you soon. We'll be having some shows coming up. We've got Party Hard coming back the 25th of July. So if you're in the Toronto area, Party Hard, Hard Party, 2-man no-show, Arn and Calls, bunch of duos. It's a great time. So it's a lot of fun coming up.
Yeah, that is our last month. We did our first Party Hard back. We didn't really talk about it at all because you weren't there, but it was our first show back from COVID, and it was a hot one. It was we do the show on a Monday night, and I'm amazed every Monday night when people come out to the show and there's a full crowd and people are ready to hang and watch comedy. It is a very special Monday.
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, my God, we've been doing the show for almost 15 years. Like, the amount of theaters that we've gone through that have closed and then opened and closed. And but the thing that I actually love about it, and I know I'm promoting my own show here, but the thing that is just so exciting to even watch the other acts is that it's a scenic improv show with no training wheels. Like, there's just nothing you can do. It's all duos, and the duos get like 5 to 7 minutes. And if the scene is kind of done, but the lights don't come down, you just keep going. Like, there's no one to edit. There's no one to tag you out. It's just you're there and you are with one other person and you have a set amount of time and you just figure it out together. And I think that's my favorite style of improv, where it's just you've taken away everything that might be a trick or everything that might be a crutch and you've removed it. And that's when you get to see some magic, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because sometimes when people play the show for the first time, they think about it like, oh, well, it's a new show. I got to come in hot and heavy. I got to get all my jokes in right off the top. Let's get this audience to like me. But if you do that and you create a rough foundation you're going to have a really bad 7 minutes. Your scene's going to be like, what? Everyone likes me. And then there's going to be a steep decline as you spend the next 6 minutes stuck in this poop world you've created or whatever bad premise you made up.
This is where you're going to hear a lot of 3 minutes in, you're going to have a lot of people look towards each other and say, so anyway, that's when you know a scene is really rocking.
However, I would say this. Last show that we did, I watched a scene with Sharjeel Rasool, who we love, and Trisha Black, who we also love. And I'm sure they both played the show before, but they did this move. I was like, oh, they're in so much trouble. So Sharjeel was like being an Uber driver or something, and Trisha's first line was, oh, I'm here to rob you. I'm going to steal your car. And then Sharjeel's response was, yes, I know. That's why I picked you up. And I was like, you guys are so... like, this is such a convoluted premise off the top. And I was completely wrong. They crushed it all the way through. Huge laughs right through the full 7 minutes. But that first initiation, I was like, oh, no. How are you guys going to get out of this one? It was a very delightful thing to watch.
Oh, I'm so excited to see it again, be a part of it. So yeah, that's July 25th, 8 p.m. Comedy Bar. Be there, be square.
Did you say be a part of it?
I'm excited to watch it and be a part of it.
Oh, so you didn't get the email from us?
Oh, maybe it went to my junk.
We'll talk after. We'll talk after. That's fine. We'll talk after.
More post-show tears.
I love playing with you. This week, we're talking about something that you probably listening at home know all about on this very podcast. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, then maybe you know about this phenomenon firsthand. You show up to Comedy Bar. You're standing around with a bunch of people who are friends with each other, people who perform with each other. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, one performer, offstage of course, says to another something mean. They make fun of their career, their shirt, their whatever, their bike, whatever it is. And everyone laughs, and then the other person makes fun of them back. And you go, are they mad at each other? They don't seem to be. Everyone seems to be laughing and liking this. What is this, and why are people behaving this way? Well, this is Burns, Adam. This is a big part of improv adjacent culture. I don't know if this is true in places like Copenhagen. I didn't see a lot of burn culture. I only visit Copenhagen each and every year. But I do know in Toronto, are there a lot of burns in the comedy community?
You know what I think it is? I think a lot of it is because Toronto is such a unique place. We talked about this so often, where Toronto's evolution has really come without a specific improv theater, right? When you talk about Copenhagen, it's like, well, the ICC, you're dealing with improvisers 24/7. But you mentioned Comedy Bar. Well, Comedy Bar is the free market of comedy. So in one night, you're hanging out with stand-ups, sketch, clown, solo, improvisers, everything. And so I think a lot of the traits from all of these different communities have really melded into one Toronto-based performer. And I think so a lot of these would be familiar, I think, depending on what city you're from and what kinds of people you hang out with. But I think stand-ups a lot rely on burns.
So, I mean, if you're to give a definition of a burn, how would you describe it? What's like the textbook definition of a burn?
I mean, for me, a burn is an insult that we perceive the person we are insulting is so far above that they wouldn't mind. Or that we are so close that they know this comes from a loving place.
Right. Yeah.
So, for example,
go ahead.
Like, Rob, you like doing a podcast like Personal Best, right? Very successful podcast you created. You did a pilot for a TV show, lots of international acclaim. I could burn you on Personal Best nonstop because you know it's a success. this isn't something that you feel bad about. This isn't something that you feel a lot of shame about, that I'm pushing you down. I'm saying, Rob, you know this is so great, so watch me tear it apart for fun. And you get this little boost, hopefully, of Adam's only saying this because he knows it's good. That's the only reason he feels comfortable saying it, because we're friends. Otherwise, you would never say this to my face. So that's what I think the burn realm is kind of circling.
We know that comedy is a benign violation. We've described this many times on the podcast before. Adam, you and I are playing catch in my second floor condo here, and I throw the ball and hit you in the face, and you go, ow, hit me in the face, and everyone in the room laughs because something happened, a violation happened, which is you didn't catch the ball and you got hurt. But it was benign. You got hurt on the forehead. You'll be fine. After 2 seconds, you'll be fine. But we could also imagine you and I playing football and me throwing that football out the window and you running to catch it and you falling off my Juliet balcony to your death. I don't think there's anyone at the party who's going to be laughing at you falling out of a window and dying.
No, they would probably laugh at the way you threw the football.
Yeah, I can't help that.
I mean,
but the violation there is there, but it's no longer benign. Someone actually got hurt. And so when we're talking about burns are insults, but they're a kind of benign insult. And I think you broke it down in a really smart way, which is either A, there's something that you would never be shamed about in a million years, or I could also imagine that there's a kind of intimacy where we're so close with each other and you trust me so much that I am able to burn you on things that you're sensitive about. And even though you're sensitive about those things, you know that I am doing it out of love. That sounds horrible. But what I mean is like, oh, cool. Like, for example, let's say I have a fear of abandonment or whatever, and you're making fun of me for that, whatever. Your childhood, for example. Let's say we're making fun of your childhood. Well, you know that you're safe with me. So this is a safe place where we can talk about that and laugh about a bad thing that happened and you not feel like you're being targeted or you not feel like you're being bullied.
Yeah, it's remember, I don't know if you ever did this as kids, but I grew up on a lot of like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. Like they were huge when I was growing up. And so in the schoolyard, we do a lot of play fighting. Where this is like, I'm not actually punching you in the face, but we're just recreating moves from Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jackie Chan. And this is kind of play insult, where it's like the goal is never to actually hurt you. The goal is to kind of find this new level of intimacy, this level that is, no matter what I say to you, you know that it's always through the filter of care and love. But just like play fighting, you could make a mistake and you could actually hit someone in the face, or you could actually touch on a subject or something that is very sensitive for that person. So this is why burns are a dangerous game to play. And that's why we want to make sure that the person we're playing it with, there's, a high level of probability that this is going to be safe.
I think this is I like how you brought play into this, because it makes a lot of sense for me at least, why comedians might engage in this kind of rough play, this rough verbal play with each other. If you think about a bear or a dog playing, like a puppy or a cub playing, what are they doing? They're like roughhousing, they're biting in around the neck, they're doing all sorts of stuff that if you don't, did you say
Well, you just, they're roughhousing, they're biting a neck. I was like, okay, sounds pretty good.
These are infant animals. They're children.
I'm not saying which child.
So we know that these animals are playing and having fun, and it's very safe. But the places that they're biting will kill, if hard enough. And that's not an accident, right? When a dog is learning how to do that, what they're doing is they're practicing when they actually have to kill something. And so for us as comedians, I could imagine us being at a comedy bar and you and I burning each other, being quite rough with each other, because there have been nights in comedy bar where you and I have had to walk into the audience and shut something down. Someone is calling out, someone's heckling, someone's disruptive. Great, you better be ready to go. Whether we realize it or not, it has always felt to me like burns are a kind of rehearsal for being a club comic.
Yeah, I mean, also just being like in society. Like the idea of having to deal with an asshole in public, someone who is, you know, those feelings of like, oh, fuck, 2 minutes later, you're like, I should have said this.
No.
Having these skills, they really do come in handy because there's nothing better than shutting down someone who is like parked in the bike lane and having a nice little back and forth where you just shut things down. So yeah, I think definitely part of the fun, I think an unintended part of this is the ability to use these skills elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like it is interesting thinking about if I do need to get better at burns, about roasting people, I would rather have my best friend say the mean burn to me with love than to hear it for the first time while I'm on stage from the audience.
Right.
That's a very different effect, right? Like the idea where it's like, oh, I've already heard that from Adam 300 times. Like, I'm not going to be affected by that when I'm performing. Thinking for you about burns and burnage. I mean, I think one thing that's interesting is that you could come into Comedy Bar or be new to the improv scene and just interpret this as folks being mean to each other. What's the difference between a burn and someone just bullying someone else, would you say?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Again, it's never, the attempt is never to hurt, right? I think it always comes down to something that person knows so well about themselves. They talk about that thing themselves, or it's something that no one should be ashamed of. Like I remember being at IO one time, and they were introducing some of the comedians, and like some had some like really cool current credits, and one person was a writer on the show Dharma and Greg. And again, getting a writing job in Hollywood as a writer on Dharma and Greg, it's like you're making money. You're doing quite well and will probably go to another show not long after. So the idea of teasing this person who's probably made more money than the person teasing them is a very burnable joke, right? They burn them on Dharma and Greg, and then the person who was the writer tried to burn the host back. And it didn't get that big of a laugh. And then the host goes, no, that's not fair, audience. Imagine that coming out of Dharma's mouth. And it was like a perfect back and forth burn, because it's like, look, I have the power burning you because you actually have tons of power by having this Hollywood job. So I'm free to take you down a peg because really you have the status here. So those kinds of situations are, it's our way of like, I think I've said before, like non-sexual flirting. Like it's us like being pals. We're teasing, right? That's all flirting is, especially when you're young. You're just like, I don't know what to do. I like you. I'm going to tease you because I want to interact with you more. I want to get your attention. So it feels like that's the reason why we do this, right? It's never to hurt, but it's always to connect deeper. And when we burn people that are close to us, yeah, we've got that intimacy. But then when we burn someone, you know, we might be taking a chance in burning someone who we're less close with. But that's when we would often attack something that is, again, is like, you are so successful. I can't believe you're in this dump. Like you're teasing them because they are so successful, kind of thing.
Should I imagine that coming out of Dharma's mouth?
If I had been a writer on Dharma and Greg, that would have been a great joke for Rob. But as you can see, sometimes you take the burn and sometimes you take the loss.
Intimacy is so interesting because to burn someone, you have to know them, right? There is something incredibly intimate about it. And I don't know what your house was like, but in my household, it was an incredibly passive-aggressive place. And our love language was jokes. I don't think my family was a particularly funny family growing up. I don't think there was like a lot of people doing a lot of bits. But when that problem came up, it always was expressed as a joke. It was never expressed as a family meeting or something. So there's also a kind of love language piece to this as well, too, where we could think about you're burning someone because you care about them. You're able to. You know something about them that you can joke about.
And
Have you ever seen... Oh, what?
I was going to say, like, I'm not sure if this is a global phenomenon, but it feels a little like, the idea of high school reunions. It's like, well, we don't really have those as much anymore because everyone's still in touch. Like, you can see everything online. I know what everyone's doing. Who I wanted to see again, I know what they're up to. And in our community, the improv/entertainment, whatever you want to call it, those kinds of things are very well known. Like, people advertise what they're up to. People say the job they're doing, the win they just had. And so when you're trying to get back into that intimacy groove with someone that you may have either fallen out with or you just haven't seen in a long time, that's your in. And the reason I think that's the first instinct is because we've tried the other one, which is, hey, how's that new job going? It's like, oh, good. Oh, what are you working on now? Oh, just doing my thing. And it's like, okay, I think we're all bored of that because those are the conversations we have with non-comedians, right? We have, oh, the job, mom, yeah, the job's going well. It's it's all good. But when we see our comedian friends, we constantly need that release. We need the attention. We love the back and forth. We love the kind of one-upmanship of who's going to get the last laugh in this back and forth. And so teasing people, burning them, it accomplishes so many things as long as it's done correctly. Because there's lots of incorrect ways to do burns, but when it's done correctly, it accomplishes so much, especially for comedians who often have a hard time showing legitimate intimacy.
Yeah, we'll get to when it goes wrong in just a second. But one of the things you kind of brought up here was a kind of status battle. So we know that within the kind of exchange of burns, it really is a battle of wits. You're burning each other. You're trying to twist those burns back upon each other. It's a very fun game. And some people play it dishonestly, like they will interrupt you as you're doing your final burn. And they'll say, no, we're good, which is what you do. Because they're so afraid to hear the final, ultimate burn. But for the most part, you're just kind of going back and forth until you're exhausted with each other. But have you ever seen the version of this that maybe isn't as playful? Have you ever witnessed this or had this happen to you where you're at a comedy bar and someone who's a student tries to burn you or take you on in like a burn battle that you haven't signed up for?
It's very tough. Because yes, absolutely, right? You see it with other people, you see it, you have personal experience with it, and you know that they're attempting this level of intimacy, but they've just jumped too soon, right? They've asked if I want kids on the first date, and you're just like, you just cool, just slow down a little. We're not there yet, right? Hey, it's our first date. You want kids? Can I meet your parents? Just chill for a second, because we're just not there, and trying to force that intimacy creates a little desperation on one end, and being desperate when you're making a burn is never a good mindset to be in, and that's going to lead to maybe not choosing your words correctly, maybe choosing low-hanging fruit, maybe just swinging for the fences with someone who you shouldn't even be in the same game with. Just because you're not close, and watching other people be very close with that person, you want to be in that crowd. You want to be accepted. You want to participate. So we totally get the mindset. I think it is just a dangerous game when you try to, again, ask someone to get engaged when you're just meeting them.
Yeah, like you and I have experienced this, now that you're talking about this, just being on tour. And on this podcast, you and I burn each other quite a bit because it's just what we do. It's how we talk to each other. And sometimes we've been like standing around and we'll meet someone for the first time at the bar and they'll be like, hey, I just saw your show, you piece of shit. Hey, Adam, how's your creams, you loser? And we're like, whoa, wait, what's your name? But like for them, it's like, oh, I spent all this time with you listening to the podcast. This is how you guys talk to each other. I feel like I'm the third person in this group. So they're just jumping into how they think that we talk to each other. But you and I don't talk to your mom this way. We don't talk to, we don't talk to little kids this way. Well, sometimes. But for the most part, I would say like, this is reserved for very special people in very special circumstances. Because, yeah, I am very mindful. There is a joy of me being like, oh, I'm going to be as mean. I'm going to make my meanest burn at Adam. And I know he can take it. I know I'm safe to try that out with him. I know he's safe to try that out with me. But I'm not going to risk that with a random person where I don't have a relationship with them. What? Go up to a random person and say something mean about who they are or what kind of creams they use? Their creams are private, and I don't judge people's creams other than yours.
And I think the audience will definitely judge our skin and see who has been wearing sunscreen and cream for their life and who has been rubbing their face in gravel. I'm not sure. But
well, I mean, I see if your value is having smooth skin, that's awesome. Mine is about contributing art and ideas to the world. But that's cute that you want to have a nice face.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
Just having a sip of tea. Yeah. Did you want to talk about the dangerous burns?
Oh, let's talk about the dangerous burns. So let's talk about when things go off the rails here. AC, what would be an example of it going off the rails?
Well, for me, there's three kinds of burns that we're dealing with, right? One is private burns, where me and you hanging out, we can turn it up to 11, right? We can go as dark as we want. And again, if you hear a burn that you don't like, you can speak up and say, hey, don't say that. I don't like any of that. This is definitely reserved for, again, all the things we've talked about. But if you and I were ever in a situation of like, actually that actually kind of upsets me, then we would absolutely never do that again. But the private time is where you're kind of like, oh, I know you so well, no problem. I can go as far as you want. And even if I step over the line, it's just me and you. We can have a chat about it.
Yeah, and I think the great thing is you can also see, when you know someone again, you see on their face, is this landing the way it's supposed to land? Like on the weekend, I was hanging out with someone, and we were all doing burns. And I looked over at their face, and I was like, nah, this took a turn this doesn't feel right. And so we adjusted, and then I called them the next day and was like, yeah, I think that joke was bad. Sorry. And he was like, it wasn't that bad, but thank you for saying sorry.
Oh, great.
So like you can check in with the people that you love and care about. And I know in your face where something has gone too far, or if you're not in the mood, or if you don't have anything funny back to say, I can tell.
And it's also usually at a bar with alcohol. Right? And so it feels like burns are a little like heightening, where it's like you find a game. I'm gonna keep playing this game as hard as I can until it explodes. Where we often need to take a step back, take a breath, and say, I'm gonna pause this burn for a second. And if the opportunity arises, we can bring it back and heighten it. But I think when we're burning in an area maybe we're not super comfortable with, I think we tend to amp up the volume a little quick. So there are some ups and downs to that. But the next one is public burns. And public burns are a little riskier because there's a crowd. And so there might be something that is like you and me comfortable, Rob. But if you say that in front of a crowd of people that maybe I'm like, Rob, like I don't know these people very well. want that information out there, or I need them. They don't get it unless they know who I am first, and we're getting to know them, so it's not an appropriate time. So being aware of that is very important if you are about to engage in burns, of like, who are the people around and what are their connection to me and my Bernie. Because you want to make sure that everybody feels good and nobody feels like, Jesus, this is getting really intense. So that's kind of the danger with the public burns.
Yeah, and maybe people don't understand the nuance of your burns entirely. So let's say like I'm running throughout the community and I'm ripping on Adam for being disorganized.
Whoa.
Oh, Adam, you're so unreliable. It's like, well, maybe Adam, on a scale from 1 to completely disorganized to 10 being having everything perfectly organized, he's a 7, right? Whatever. If I'm going around the community saying Adam's unreliable, well, that can actually also kind of affect your career too, right? Like if I'm running around, even as jokes, bad-mouthing you and creating that reputation for you, there is an adverse effect for you. This is not a safe place anymore for just saying a bunch of random stuff. Like, you know how horrible I would feel if someone said, like, couldn't give Adam the show. We were going to cast him in the new season of Amazon's hit show, The Boys, but we found out too many creams. You heard about the creams? It's too many creams. We don't want our show to have that many creams. Then I'd feel terrible.
Well, this is where we're starting to lose the definition of burns, right? This is where the goal is not to create intimacy. The goal is to not share moments with people you love. Now we're just getting into shit talking, right? And I think this is where we have to be careful. I remember another Second City alum, David Shore, he was telling a story of in a class asking students like, oh, who have you trained with or who are your other teachers? And someone said, Melody Johnson, who's another celebrated Second City alum. And he flippantly said, oh, Melody, hack. The students had no idea of David and Melody's relationship. They were friends. That's a joke David would say to Melody because, again, she is so revered. So this kind of backfired because the students went to Melody and were like, there's a teacher here, like, trash talking you. And she had to approach David, and David had, like, it was a missed opportunity for a burn because we didn't kind of follow he wasn't aware of the public. Who are the public people hearing this? And are they aware of what's going on? Or are they going to perceive this as something that is an attack? So we just got to be careful.
That's actually a problem now that I'm hearing that story. Do you know that in every class I teach that you're not a part of, I tell everyone that you're my protege? When I'm talking about verse and chorus, I say I trained this guy a long time ago, my protege, Adam Colley. He's a young whippersnapper who has a lot of great ideas. I'm really rooting for him. So I just want to tell you that for the last probably 7 years, I've been doing that. I'm sorry.
That's awful. The good thing is that I do the same thing with you, but I stopped doing it about 15 years ago because no one knew who you were. They were like, I don't know if this is a joke, if this is real. I don't know who this man is you keep talking about. So it's nice that they all know who I am. The last one, and I think this is something that I guess is still pretty prominent, but is the most dangerous, is the social media burn. Ooh. And this is where, Rob, you post a picture of your family, and I say some inside joke that you and I share, maybe your family shares, we've all done it when we were hanging out together, but it could be perceived as an insult. And I post it anyway with no context.
Yeah.
And people who aren't your family, anyone else, could be like, oh my God, not only is Adam an asshole, is Rob's family okay? Like, are they really dealing with that issue? Because I'm sure everybody here who's ever been in an argument over text or been in a situation where you're not sure of the tone or the meaning behind something that is written, this gets very dicey. So the social media burns, I think we got to be extra careful. And it's very tough because even the reply to that burn might be another burn, and we might be playing the game, or we might be in a real fight and no one knows. And this is where it just spins off and leads to a bunch of negativity, a bunch of rumors, and it can become a problem.
Yeah, and I think like it's interesting because not everyone is going to feel comfortable with this type of behavior. Like not everyone's comfortable with burns. Oh, I should mention that when you said no one knew who I was, you made me laugh so hard that I cried, and it really hurt my one eye. So now my one eye is going to be crying throughout the rest of the podcast. Yeah, like reciprocity is a really important piece of this, right? We have to make sure that the person that we are burning is burning us back, or they are somehow playing off of it. So you and I have a couple of friends who don't burn back, but their whole kind of shtick is being burned. They take burns and then they like fumble through the response and then end up saying something more incriminating in response to that. And so for those people, I go like, oh, well, you're in a separate category because you're participating in this piece. You like the attention of the burn and you're good at swinging it around. You never burn me back, but you're playing with it. And then all the other people who we're having burn relationships with, hopefully you're giving it as good as you're getting it. If the relationship is one-sided, where you're only ripping on someone and they don't do anything back, I mean, that's concerning for me. Because it's also, first of all, it's not fun or funny. And I don't know why you would want to burn someone who doesn't respond to you in that kind of joking way.
Yeah, I mean, the person I know, one of those people would be our dear friend Isaac Kessler.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac is in Hard Party. He's been in shows with us for 15, 20 years. We love Isaac. And Isaac is an incredible performer, but he's also a mix of like improv and clown. And so Isaac does some weird things in his shows. And we definitely tease him about what his next show will be like. And Isaac laughs and heightens this joke. He'll yes and this burn. And that's Isaac's way of participating in the burns and creating that intimacy, right? We all love feeling on the inside. We love having inside jokes with people, having secrets. Oh, that's our little secret, me and you. And this burn relationship creates these dynamics when there might not be another way to do it. I see these people, once, twice a month, and it's at a comedy venue for a comedy show. And so we only have 6 minutes together before the show starts. And so we do these quick little burns. We do these quick teasing. And all of a sudden we feel bonded. We feel protected. We feel okay. We're in the same circle and we've got each other's back. Because you don't do this if you actually feel this way. This is where the shitty people do it behind people's backs. And you never hear about it. If they're saying it to your face, it means they love you and they think that you can handle it. So yeah, being aware of what is the recipient doing, huge. It's a massive part of burns.
I mean, yeah, if you were feeling self-conscious or like you don't know a lot about burning or being burned, I mean, it's interesting thinking about like a bunch of people burning each other and then a new person comes to the group and then everyone stops burning and they're suddenly very polite to that person.
Right.
That strangely enough is the biggest insult you could have at a comedy bar where everyone's all of a sudden like, hello, how are you? Did you enjoy your weekend? Because we don't feel comfortable. We don't know you well enough to invite you into making fun of your haircut. So we're being very polite. So the politeness is actually the reverse piece of this. Is there any other things you're thinking about burns or burnage?
I think anytime, just because something is, if you are the person being burned and you recognize all of these qualities and you're like, oh, they're just burning me to create intimacy, but you don't like it, you don't have to participate. You can
Please don't.
You can very clearly just say, however you want to say it, but that this isn't comfortable for you. You don't enjoy this, so let's not do it. And my God, if someone ever says that to you, immediately stop and don't burn people. This does not have to be part of your comedy lifestyle. It is just a part of a lot of people's comedy lifestyle. but it's not mandatory. You don't like it, don't do it. I think part of the podcast, though, is hopefully being able to recognize it for what it is, and then figuring out if that's something you want to participate in, and hopefully how to participate in. But it's definitely something that is not, it's not going to be for everyone.
I did an interview a long, long time ago with Toronto's darling, Jane Caruana, who we both love. And she was talking about improvising with the Bad Dog. And back in the day when Jane started, and you and I both started, we were nowhere close to a gender parity. I mean, I don't know if we have a gender parity in the Toronto improv community right now, but back then, things were very different. If you were a female improviser, you were either hired by Second City, or that was it. There wasn't a lot of other options. And Jane was part of a very small group of women who were incredibly funny, who would get to be hired, and most of them would go on to be hired by Second City. But one of the things she said in this interview was she noticed that most of the women that stuck around in the comedy community were folks who had brothers. And I thought that was interesting. Like, this kind of culture, this kind of razzing, this kind of teasing is an expression most often of brotherly love. Like, if you think about how, you would talk to your brother, how I would talk to my brother, we're not saying I love you. It took a lot of therapy, and probably into my 30s, before I started telling the men in my life when I got off the phone, I love you, good night. That was a big choice in my life to do that. But for the most part, growing up, I would never say I love you to my brother. I don't know if I say I love you to my brother right now. But I think that's very, very interesting. And it's very possible that you grow up in a house without an older brother who's constantly giving you shit. And so this whole world may feel completely weird to you. Why are you seem to like each other. Why are you being mean to each other? What's the point of this? And yeah, if you don't get it and you don't want to participate in it, you should not have to.
No.
Absolutely. Or if you're not good at it, like Adam, you don't have to do it either, right?
You're gonna die young.
Oh, you think I'm young still? Thank you.
Oh, you think you're gonna die tomorrow? Oh no.
Okay, you see, well, that's Burns. That's Burn culture. That's the roasts. Very excited. One of my favorite forms of comedy, and I'm glad it's still going strong. Anything on stage or off stage that you're thinking about that's inspiring you?
So, been doing a lot of flights recently, international, national, and I don't really want to give this information out just because it's good that less people have it, but I can't believe everyone doesn't. And this is the Nexus card, or global entry, pre-check TSA, whatever you want to call it. But it's a card. You got to go have a meeting. You fill out some forms online. You pay $50, and you skip security. You skip to the front of the line.
Security.
You have your own security line. You don't have to go with the general public, where you don't have to take off your shoes. You don't have to do a bunch of the normal stuff. And then you also have your own line for customs. And so everyone's talking about how nutty Toronto airport was, the customs and all this stuff. It takes me 2 minutes. You just go, you tap your card, you get a little receipt. I don't even talk to anyone at customs. So anyway, it's just something that I really believe in. And I really think that if you enjoy travel, get it. And it just makes your life so much easier. You have to get to the airport like an hour. You can give yourself an hour more. You don't have to be there that early. So anyway, the Nexus card. I just reused it again yesterday, and I was like, fuck, this thing is so good.
And how much of my personal information do I have to give to the government to get a Nexus card?
Probably everything that I could find in a couple minutes online.
But like, is it like they're doing background checks and?
Honestly can't remember, but I would assume it would be a police check, your travel history for the last 5 years, and then like your personal information. Like, you give them whatever, your passport and all that stuff, maybe your fingerprints.
Wait, you're giving your fingerprints?
Yeah, but you always do if you go to the States.
Wait, Adam, you gave your fingerprints to a government agency?
Yeah. Have you? Do you? I guess. Well, yeah. I guess you don't have some of these things, but yeah, absolutely.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
You save some time at the airport.
Yeah.
If you commit a murder, you're going to jail for sure. But
Sorry, are you saying I shouldn't give my fingerprints because that way I can commit murders and won't go to jail?
yeah,
All right.
yeah. If I commit a murder, it's going to be harder for them to get my fingerprints. But they
Yeah.
already have yours.
And that's
In fact,
the number
if
one
you-
way people solve murders nowadays. Fingerprints.
If you commit a random murder now and they find a fingerprint on the knife
Mhm.
and it matches yours, then they just go directly to you.
Yeah,
and
great.
arrest you.
And they're like, "Where's Adam?" And it's like, "Well, he's traveling. He's got the Nexus card. He wasn't even there."
Oh, it's your getaway plan for after
Yeah.
you murder people.
Very easy.
Oh,
Stop
Wow.
that man. Sorry, sir. He's got a Nexus card.
hey, you ever read a book before?
Have I read a book?
Yeah.
I've held one, looked at one, but no.
I don't like fiction. Do you know that? I don't like fiction books. I don't read them often.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that either.
It's like, I mean, if there's a story I need to read, absolutely. But my sister for my birthday got me a book, which I think is a dangerous gift. Giving someone a book for a birthday or Christmas or something,
Yeah.
that's a big. It's like homework. It's like the gift it got you was homework.
Yeah.
But I'm reading this book called Song of Achilles right now, and it is incredible. It is a very, very good fictionalized retelling of the myth of Achilles, with a kind of modern twist. It is a homoerotic, mythological, sexy book that feels a lot like Twilight, that vampire story, but just with two ancient Greek dudes. And I'm having a very good time reading this very sexy book. So I would definitely recommend, if you like old things, if you like sexy things, Song of Achilles is a great read.
And you wear gloves when you read it?
No, I just read it normally.
Oh, so your fingerprints are all over that book.
Beside me, and now it's clear as it's promised that we're making two reflections into one. Cause it's like you're my mirror staring back at me, staring back at me.